In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. Today we're watching Highlander, and no introduction of Highlander would be complete without reaffirming the fact that there can only be one. And today, that one guest is Kevin Mosteller. So, Kevin, is Highlander a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
Well, I think it has not been remade. There have been, like 8 sequels in a television series, something like that.
That many?
It's not 8. It's like 4 or 5. It's a lot. It's an egregious amount of sequels and like 9 seasons of a television series. Especially
considering the whole tagline is, there can only be one, and then there's not.
Yeah. And
I guess there's not. You also know that they're in pre-production on a new Highlander movie, right? Like an actual Highlander remake?
I had read that. It's been in active development for a long time. I guess Ryan Reynolds was attached to it at one point, which...
That's terrible casting.
I know.
Oh, God.
So
I don't like that.
No, I don't either, but I don't like most of the remakes that come out, so...
Fair. Well, welcome back to Ideal Remake. Thank you so much for coming back. This was great, and I'm so excited we get to talk about this movie together.
Yeah, same. So happy to be here. I love this movie. It's an old childhood favorite, so...
Yeah, do you remember when you first saw it?
I do. So this was, like I said, like a childhood favorite of my dad was massive, still is, massive Queen fan. And so a part of Highlander is the Queen score, or not score, the Queen soundtrack. And so that movie was always floating around our house. We had a Channel 5 tape of it. They used to do Movies Till Dawn, which was like, it would start at like 3 and run till 5 in the morning on Channel 5 in LA. And it, we had an old, like poorly edited version of Highlander edited for TV that we watched over and over again. And, as we got older, we were able to see the uncut version, seeing all the sequels in the theater. They were all terrible.
What exactly happens in the sequels? Are they like kind of prequels in time of like tracking him through history, or are there now more Highlanders?
So most of them are. The television show actually did a good thing of like, we know, okay, so Highlander was the end, but this is like, let's say the middle, and this is another guy who eventually gets killed, eventually loses the game, right?
This is where he goes and meets Sunda Castigir.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you dropped that name, because I wanted to bring him up later.
Yeah, he's great. I recast him.
Yeah, so did I. Cool. I gave him a bigger role, too.
I think he deserves a bigger role.
Yeah, he's great. I
have theories and plans, but like your knowledge of this like franchise is bigger than mine. So I'm going to be asking some questions.
Sure.
Like, because in the first movie, it sure seems like Connor McLeod is the Highlander. It's not that everyone's a Highlander.
No.
He's the one Highlander because he's from the Scottish Highlands.
Yes, that is correct.
And then that term has just kind of like come to encompass all of them at this point, which I think is dumb.
That kind of worked its way into the lexicon. It was never really, it was always that he was just Highlander as a nickname, right? Because he was the one immortal from the Highlands of Scotland. That kind of like weaseled its way into pop culture a little bit, that they're all Highlanders.
In the same way it's like Frankenstein versus Frankenstein's monster.
Exactly. That is a perfect analogy. But yeah, so the original movie without any sequel planning was definitely his story. So the title made sense, but the more you went along,
does make sense.
Yeah, the more you went along, the more you kind of.
So is there a collective noun for this group of immortals, or is it just you're immortal? You're one of these special people.
I don't think there's a collective noun for them. I think it is just immortal. You're one of them. There's no like they're the secret immortal club or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or whatever. So it's.
My next question is like, because it's not like they all popped up at the same time. Like, the Kurgan was 2,000 years old. Ramirez was like 1,000 something years old. And they were just kind of like systematically like going through and living their lives. But like Connor McLeod is almost like the last one because he's 400 something years old and pops up and is just like, oh, well, let me tell you about what's going on.
Right. He was essentially a baby Highlander or baby immortal. See, look, I'm even doing it.
Yeah. So because like in my head, it'd be like, this thing happens and then they all kind of have to find each other. But no, it's just like it's all sporadically, and then they just like feel it in their bones like, oh no, it's the gathering. I guess they're done popping up, time to go.
Right. So the thing through, and that I guess gets into the quickening, which is also the other big fantasy element. But the quickening is supposed to be like their superpower, right? Like they feel it in their bones, their spidey sense that there's another one around, and it gives them, strength. And when they wind up slicing one of the heads off of another immortal, they get that strength and they get that, soul energy or whatever transferred to them.
That is definitely what the movie said.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like that's what happened. It was more like the quickening. They could certainly sense each other, and then but when one of them died, there was like this big orgasm moment, and then they went back to being exactly the same. Yeah,
the movie didn't really touch on it. Like the exposition in this movie, which is why I know some people have a hard time following it, is that it just kind of always is. Like, this is the world we're in. Like, nobody knows why. It just is.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need an explanation.
Yeah.
But it certainly felt like the things that they did tell us, they told us, but it never happened. Like, they didn't show us. It was tell and no show.
Right.
Like, until the very end when, the Highlander wins, he kills the Kurgan, and then a demon eats him, and he's superpowered.
Right.
That's the only time when it was, like, new and different and weird.
Well, that's him winning the prize. That was him getting the be-all, end-all power. Right.
Like, that was the only time when he became different than he had been prior to killing someone.
Right. That I do agree with, but I guess
I have a pitch for that, but I'm sorry, keep going.
No. I guess that's the visual of getting electrocuted by phantom things and cars blowing up is enough to say that something's happening. The director of this movie was a music video director, and boy, does it show. It's a mess. a lot of cool shots. The Queen music helps.
It does.
A lot of cool shots, but they're disjointed. They don't match. And it is a little jarring now, Sorry.
No, keep going. I was interrupting you.
No, I was just saying, watching it as a kid, it was totally fine. You didn't notice, right? It was just this cool, like, essentially 2 hour and a half rock video.
Yeah.
And then, but you watch it, you've made a few films yourself, or you're kind of used to it, and yeah, it's a bit jarring. Some of the shots.
I mean, it's definitely a movie that has like even the whole training montage and all of that fun stuff.
Oh yeah, probably one of the longest training montages in history.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They're immortal. They can take as much time as they want.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting, especially like, and the thing everyone makes fun of, it's like, oh, well, they've cast this French guy as a Scottish person, and they cast the Scottish person as Egyptian by way of France.
Right. He was also in Spain and Japan at the same time.
Egyptian by way of Spain.
Right. And
then he had this super cool sword that he only made one of, and that was what gave him away, because it was a sword where the metal was folded over itself a bunch of times.
Right, and that was something that they couldn't have done with that technology at that time.
Yeah, I also I should have asked his opinion on this, but I forgot. But I'm friends with like someone who I think you've met, Zach Luna, who's been a guest on this show before, and like he knows swords, and I don't think that's a thing.
No, it's not. It's something they invented for this to make.
But they've used it in other places too. Like even in Game of Thrones, the Valyrian steel swords are folded over on themselves hundreds of times, and that's part of what makes them so magical and special.
It might just be what they would call technobabble, like just to why is this sword so damn strong, right? Like
fantasy babble, you say?
Yeah, fantasy babble. There we go. I do have to say, on the casting note, my favorite line in the entire movie is Sean Connery mispronouncing pendejo. When he calls him, all right, bandejo, now we're going to teach you how to fight, or some such whatever he says. But
yeah, I didn't realize this ahead of time, but it looks like August is going to be my month of Sean Connery.
Oh, yeah? Are you doing Zardoz?
Well, no, the last movie I talked about, the one I recorded yesterday, is Avengers.
Oh, nice. The television show version, yeah? The
1998 movie with Ray Fiennes and Uma Thurman and Sean Connery.
I forgot he was in that, yeah.
Yeah, he's the villain in the teddy bear suit.
That's right. Oh my God, how did I forget that?
It movie's so weird.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this weird movie. Sure. So, how much, so you said that you saw the kind of expanded universe, you watched the TV show and everything. Mm-hmm. What are some of the, key components that make for a Highlander movie? What are the important tentpoles that we need for Highlander?
A definite imposing villain, like a big bad for sure.
Yes.
So here's the thing. The sequels are all different. The Highlander 2 is probably my favorite bad sequel of any movie ever, just because it's so weird. So Highlander 2, it turns out that they're aliens from another planet, and so it takes place in American future, where Connor McLeod is an old man, and the ozone has completely collapsed on itself, and Connor McLeod uses his knowledge that he won from the prize in the first film as an old man to build a ray shield that is basically a fake ozone. Well, now new Highlander, I'm doing it.
We have no other word for them.
Right. So let's just call them Highlanders. Let's do what everybody else does.
I guess, yeah.
So new Highlanders are coming in from this planet, and this is where they changed the mythology, where all Connor McLeod has to do is kill another immortal, another Highlander, to get the quickening back. Yeah, he gets his youth back. He's an old man, and this guy comes from a future flying on a glider like Green Goblin, and he winds up tricking him to fall under a train, and the train takes the guy's head off. Suddenly he's young Connor McLeod again after the big orgasmic, quickening storm. And then here's the best part. All he has to do is call Ramirez's name, and Ramirez will come back and reappear. So Sean Connery is in it, and it's like, what?
Why?
Yeah, because I guess they wanted to put the gang back together.
Oh, that makes no sense. That's so dumb.
So here's the subplot of the movie. Or actually, I guess it is the plot. The shield that Connor McLeod built around the Earth to, like the fake ozone or whatever, has now been corporatized. It's now owned by a corporation who is an evil corporation who is keeping it running, and charging for it. And now it's kind of tackling the 80s greed of it all. And so it turns out that there's this secret resistance group who's trying to shut down their I guess, Antifa, future Antifa, I guess, or what people think Antifa is.
I mean, as long as it's anti-fascist, I'm for it.
And actually, yeah, it is. It is technically anti-fascist. So
sounds great.
So yeah, they're led by Virginia Madsen, and they team up to shut down the shield because the shield is no longer needed. The ozone has repaired itself. It was only supposed to be temporary. So on top of that, this dictator, Highlander, immortal dictator, comes from another planet to fight McLeod because he has some beef from centuries ago on a different planet. I can't remember the name of the planet, but it's something ridiculous. And so he has to both...
Landhire.
Yeah, Landhire, yes, that's where it's... it's from Landscott, But... So they have to shut down the shield and fight this big bad, played by Michael Ironside, who is really great in it.
Fair. Michael Ironside's usually pretty good.
Yeah, he's an excellent villain. But that's the plot of this movie. So they have to team up and shut down this sci-fi shield and also fight new immortals.
Got it.
And it's one of the
All right.
most bizarre sequels ever made.
Yeah. I mean, on the plus side, cool, we're going to ignore all of that.
Yeah.
But also, that gives us a little bit of free reign to kind of do what we want, because if the whole Highlander mythology is subject to change, that means that we can do what we want as well.
That is exactly what I did, because it got so mired in different things. And
Yeah.
so
It was also limited a little bit, I think, by the scope of what it was capable of doing. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're now 40 years since. It came out in 82?
I think it was 86.
86. All right,
Yeah.
fine. 35 years.
35, yeah.
And what I think we can do is... So one of my big things is I want to visually represent gaining the power of the people you kill. Mm-hmm. And I think you can do that by each individual Highlander having a different superpower.
Okay. That's
I'll-
an interesting approach, such
Well,
as...
because they keep talking about how Kurgan is this incredibly strong Highlander. And, like, literally his power can be immense strength. And they even hint at it a little bit in this movie when Connor's sneaking up on Ramirez, he, like, sneaking up, raises his sword, Ramirez is gone. And, like, I would give Ramirez kind of, like, small teleportation, like, can kind of, like, pop around kind of thing. And when Kurgan kills Ramirez, now all of a sudden Kurgan has that ability.
Right, okay. That's definitely an interesting approach. I always thought it was, like, skill that they had acquired over the years, and the strength of the soul that they take is what makes them the strong.
That would be great, but we don't have a visual way of representing that.
Yeah.
And I feel like literally stealing the superpowers from different people is a good way of doing it. And it's also a good, like, shorthand of all of a sudden Kurgan is using Sunda Castier's power, and it's like, oh no, you killed Sunda.
No, that's a good way to visually represent it, yeah.
The other thing I wanted to do was... I really like this as a way for Kurgan to taunt Connor, is to use the powers of the people and friends that he's killed. Mm-hmm. And I also think that can then work to be his eventual undoing if he's attacking with Sunda's power and then he starts using Ramirez's ability, which is like, because like, I killed your friend.
Sure.
But of course, it's Ramirez's ability. So if there's any ability that Connor already knows how to counter, it's this one. And so it's like, oh, I know how to fight Ramirez. You're using Ramirez's power. Great, I do this, and that's how I win. So it's because Kurgan gets an overinflated... Like, Kurgan loses because of his own ego, because he's the strongest.
Right, so it's like a cocky, wrong
it's showboating.
move. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also kind of like the fun twist of, like, everyone says, oh, Kurgan, he's the strong one, he's the strength. But then, like, we get this reveal in the middle of the fight that was never my power. That was the first power I stole. My power is this. Oh, no, this other thing. And it's like he's kept this, like, extra bonus thing secret because he's like, it's his ace in the hole.
Right. He's killed so many people over the years that he's got everybody's power, essentially.
Yeah.
So he's using everything that he's got and keeping his own as a secret.
Basically. It's like, did you ever watch season 1 of Heroes and only season 1 of Heroes?
I have never seen Heroes, actually. That's one I missed.
Fair enough, then never mind.
Well, you can still tell me.
there are two characters in that show who have the ability to gain other characters' powers, but through different means.
Okay.
One of them, it's like proximity. The other one has to like take them. And it's like, but when the two of them go up against each other, it's like all these different kinds of powers colliding. And it's so cool. Season 1 of Heroes is great. The end. It's a shame they never made more.
Yes. I remember the one season that was made, and I remember thinking, man, I should watch that, and never did.
It is worth your time. I do genuinely enjoy that first and only that one season. And there's interesting stuff in the later seasons, but they don't quite capture the magic anymore. But like kind of that idea of just like you get to see them get stronger over the course of the movie by going full Mega Man and gaining the power of all the bad guys they defeat along the way.
Sure.
Everyone loves Mega Man.
Yeah, everybody loves Mega Man. That's the best part, right?
So that's one of my like changes to the lore. Like I had two kind of big ones, like for story reasons and because for the cool visual element, that was one of them.
Okay.
The other one is, and I warned you about this ahead of time, but I definitely made Connor female.
Yeah, I did as well. And I think we're probably going to go in two different directions with our pitches, but
Fair.
I sat there and I thought a lot about it, and I really, really like one of the other things that like Highlander really, really needs in each of its films is flashbacks to different points in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really, really loved the idea of watching it from a woman's perspective because historically they've been, kind of considered second-class citizens until the 1900s. So
yeah, absolutely.
It'd be absolutely interesting to see. And you never, in any of the movies, they never had a female Highlander.
Which is dumb.
Yeah, very dumb. So, anyway, yeah, I really think that's an interesting approach. And to be honest with you, why remake a movie without taking a different perspective on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. The first one still exists. We're not erasing that one. So
right.
Let's play around with the format a little bit.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, like, because you said that you had some ideas and changes as well that you wanted to make. Tell me about them.
Absolutely. So do you want me to just jump into a pitch or?
Yeah, jump into a pitch. We're not doing casting yet, but do your pitch.
So I want to make this a love story. I'm very, very interested in, as we discussed, I'm very interested in making this a kind of an immortal love story. It doesn't start that way. But like we discussed, Connor, I guess we can still call her Connor. Is that a name for?
We can come up with that later if we can't, but I don't see any reason not to call her Connor.
Yeah. So Connor MacLeod is been in a relationship with another immortal throughout for the past, let's say, 200 or 300 years, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, they had their own journey before, and that's what I would like to tell in the flashback portion of how female Connor essentially meets her current beau, I guess. And I'll get to that. There's a point why I want to do that. We definitely need a big bad in there, and I do think we need a Kurgan. And what I want to do with that is I want to kind of pull the old bait and switch, the red herring, make the Kurgan the red herring. And with these two remaining lover Highlanders, I want them to have to go up against the Kurgan and maybe the male who I actually made Castigear.
I figured that's where you were going.
Yeah. So I wanted him to fight the Kurgan and then get to a losing point and then have Connor come and take out the Kurgan. And then the rest of the movie is now these two lovers who have to fight for the prize. Whereas Connor could say something like, why don't we just remain, we're the last two, why don't we just remain immortals? And some of the things I wanted to do throughout the historical flashbacks is show these two people always on the right side of history, helping out, part of the Underground Railroad, or fighting in World War II, or
killing the Nazis, saving Rachel.
Yeah, which actually I think was a deleted scene. I don't remember that. Last night was the first time I saw that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because I feel like they'd had that scene. They needed that. I don't think it was because of there's the whole he says later, it's a kind of magic.
Yeah, that's still in there at the end, but I don't think I've ever seen that scene with the Nazi before.
Interesting.
But anyway, I always wanted to see.
I'm glad it was there. Like I'm fully in favor of that scene.
Oh, absolutely. I liked it a lot.
As far as I'm concerned, it was the best Connor scene in the entire movie.
Sure. It was very charming in that moment. I really think, I don't know, it was cut for time. I swear, I've never seen it before, which is great.
I believe you.
Watching something new of one of these movies I've seen a million times.
Right. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but this time it did.
Yeah, no, it was great. I really wished it was in the original. Yeah. But yeah,
I like your idea. I actually am fully on board with this idea, and I see no reason to not do that. And I also find that super interesting. Like the idea of, because that was one of the other things I wanted to talk about. Like they keep saying there can only be one, but why?
Right.
It's like they feel it in their bones. There can only be one. All right.
Right. Well, so the original
They are immortals who have to kill other immortals in order to win the right to die.
essentially, which the whole idea of like being immortal is very painful, watching everybody grow old and die that you love, and not being able to really get close to anybody. I understand the connection there, I guess.
Sure, absolutely.
To the human, you can't really be a human being, and which is where I want to take it actually, in terms of also the ethereal kind of religious aspect of the quickening, which it always felt a little religious to me, I guess. I don't know if religion is the right word, but definitely ethereal, right? Like a fantasy ethereal. So I believe that these two lovers who were, let's just say, Connor and Castigear, they wind up having to face off with each other. And our lead, Connor, is like, why don't we just continue doing what we've been doing, which is helping people throughout history, throughout time. And the other, Castigear, saying, no, this is what we've spent our entire life doing, and I can't do this anymore. Like we have no choice. And he becomes very righteous about it. He becomes very righteous about it. From there, we see that he comes out and says, like, I was going to take the bullet. I was going to get killed by the Kurgan, so we didn't have to do this because I knew we were the last three, but now we have no choice, right? So, and then the big face-off is, our lead has to kill her husband, lover, whatever, of 500 some odd years, and winds up winning, but at the end, she really didn't win. So...
Yeah, no, I think that is a far more dramatic arc than the one they gave us, and I like that a lot better.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those whole things of, like, all right, well, what happens if you end up and it's just two people who were on the same side the whole time? And I fully agree with this idea, and I like it. I still want to add in the extra aspect of different powers, and they're all, like, even if it's the last three, they all have like a ridiculous skill set that they've built up over hundreds, if not thousands, of years.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's like the kind of like all the X-Men in three people.
Yeah, or it's like those weird moments when like occasionally like Rogue takes everyone's powers and is just like, I am all of the X-Men.
Right. And that's super fun. I really like that idea. And especially at the end, we can still have them like. Yeah, almost a dark reveal in a way of like she's been married to this person for 500 years or maybe not married, but however, right? Mm-hmm. And she didn't know, he killed so-and-so, and she's, knew him, but I guess turns out really didn't know him because he's got all these powers. Was he off, moonlighting, killing people or killing other immortals?
Well, because he was potentially planning for this day, whereas she was not.
Exactly.
And like she even thinks back, and there are some flashbacks of them facing off against someone, and him going out of the way to make sure that he got the final kill instead of her.
Yeah, and
that's now he gets spike elbows and laser knees.
Yeah, can grow his fingernails super long, and use that as a something. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. We'll come up with We'll come up with like the core superpower for like our main four, and then. But I agree. So does that mean that you are cutting Brenda Wyatt entirely?
No, it does not. I recast her.
Yes.
But I did not make. I mean,
you didn't make her the weird love interest of a hundreds-of-year-old person going out with a 30-something-year-old?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fine. I have no problem with that.
I cut that out.
Good. I'm cool with that. It's a love interest that, makes sense. Because this movie, as it stands now, was A, little rapey. And by a little rapey, I mean not little rapey. It was physically, textually rapey.
Oh, yeah. It was a plot point. It was at one point, which is he did the Kurgan obviously raped his girlfriend.
Heather,
thank you. It was off screen, thank God, but he used it as a bargaining chip to kind of egg him on.
And it's just like there's no script needs that.
I agree with that. I really agree with that.
And so like that has no place. I don't want anything to do with that because it's like at this, and like, it's just bad. It's bad, lazy writing.
It really is. It's literally the women in refrigerators trope, which is so tired.
Absolutely is. Yes. That said, the scene with Connor when Heather had aged and like she was dying of old age and he was just there with her looking the exact same, aside from the fact that the makeup looked ridiculous and dumb, was genuinely a sad scene. And Ramirez had warned him, is like, you need to leave her. You're going to go through a heartbreak that you'll never understand. And part of me was like, yeah, but still his choice to make. And also, even if you're going to be sad at the end, wouldn't you rather have all those happy years together? Exactly.
And that's maybe revealing a little too much about myself here, so feel free to cut this if you want. But I am a widow. My first wife died, and let me tell you, like, you do cherish those years, even though it was short. As somebody who's been through that scene really does kind of speak to me in a weird way, especially with that like incredibly gorgeous, probably one of the best Queen songs ever written playing under it. I really think that that is needed for Connor McLeod.
I agree.
I feel like, and I wrote that into my pitch here. I definitely, and while, Ramirez is like that buddy who's like, he sees the girlfriend that's bad for you and is like, dude, you're turning into somebody else, man. He's like that kind of guy, right? Trying to warn him. Whereas you, in the relationship in the moment, don't want it to end whether or not you see it's, you know what I mean? Kind of bad for you.
I don't even see that necessarily as being the case.
Right.
I see this like they're immortal, but at some, like, they still have to live their first lifetime.
Right.
Like you don't get to just like, oh, I'm immortal. All right, my brain just clicks over into immortality mode. No, you're still a human living out your human life, and you have to. You have to like experience that thing. Like, and I feel like even Ramirez would be like, you should leave her, but I know that you're not going to.
Right. And like, I do feel like he's definitely, I was just using a bad analogy, sorry.
No, I think you were using a good analogy, but even still, like, I feel like one of the things that they can say, like a line for this movie is, so much of who we are as immortals is defined by that first lifetime we led.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Like, for Kurgan, he was a monster torturing people.
Yeah, barbarian.
Yeah, it was yes.
Yeah.
And like... And like even it can even boil down to like that Connor McLeod was someone who believed in love and had this amazing like life, even though it ended sadly. It was still a time that she was happy together. And Sunda, we can find out what Sunda Castagir's first life was and whether or not he was telling the truth about that this whole time.
Right. That's an interesting.
He may have gone the other way and listened to the person and left the person he was in love with, and that way you get like tried to switch on immortality mode and never did, and like instead of having all those years of happiness, like went off to go do immortal things, but kept every once in a while checking in on this person that he was in love with, and just like breaking his heart every time he did, and eventually she still died, and he still has the exact same sadness. But he doesn't have those years of happiness together.
Right. It's almost like an emptiness. It's like a keeping somebody at bay. Longing. You want it, but you can't have it.
Yeah. And it's worse.
Yeah, it is. That is absolutely worse. Real quick, I want to establish a little bit of the mythology that it's not. It's like unspoken in the original. So the way your immortality gets activated is you die. It's your first death. So, like, for Connor McLeod, it was when the Kurgan stabbed him, and he became, a Highlander, or an immortal Highlander.
Which was crazy for me, because the Kurgan specifically wanted to kill him.
Yes.
So it sure seemed like he was a Highlander already.
Yes.
Because the Kurgan knew about him.
Oh, so maybe it's not. Maybe it's just that they die. And because I always assumed that it was upon your first, like, mortal wound, because you have Highlanders, or immortals, that are all different shapes, sizes, and ages, right? Like the guy in the beginning, Fasir, is like clearly in his 50s.
Right.
Sean Connery is obviously in his 60s. And it just, to me, that kind of explained it, was like the first time you got a mortal wound is how you'll be for the rest of your... It's kind of like being bit by a vampire. Like the moment you're bit by the vampire. Stay. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it's why there's a baby vampire in What We Do in the Shadows.
Exactly, because the baby got eaten.
I would give that to you, but I will say you're still for lack of a better word, Highlander. You're still an immortal, but you don't know, and it's like latent abilities.
Right.
So Kurgan is activated, like has his abilities. He knows that person's a Highlander or whatever.
Yeah.
But that person doesn't know it about themselves.
Exactly.
So, like, Kurgan could have just gone and killed him and been like, cool, this was easy, and gets the powers or whatever. I wonder what they had.
Right.
But then, but for Connor McLeod, like, those things don't start to awaken until that death happens.
Yes.
Even though they're still there, but you need to actually pull, like, it's like getting a new toy. You got to pull the tag out. It's still the toy, but you can't put in the batteries until you pull the tag.
Exactly, and you have to hone that skill too. It is very much. I feel like it is very much like the X-Men. You know, hit puberty and you get mutant powers or something like that. But in this case, it's just you get a mortal wound, or you know, you're killed in a horrific way. Because that, again, I feel like is a big part of an immortal's, at least in this world, an immortal's journey is going through your first death and learning what it feels like. So, because
if there was a book called The Immortal's Journey, I would read it.
I would too. We could even call this Highlander: The Immortal's Journey.
You know what? I think we should. I'm writing it down.
All right.
So I have another random question for you because you're more familiar with the lore than I am.
Sure.
And a Highlander or an immortal dies when their head is cut off.
Yes, that is the only way you can kill them is removing their head. It's not a gunshot or whatever.
So my question is, if someone who is not a Highlander kills a Highlander by cutting off their head, does that person who wasn't a Highlander get that become a Highlander? Because that was the way that made sense to me in my head of, like, when I first saw this movie years ago, of I would assume all the Highlanders popped at the same time, but they're spread out all over the world. But theoretically, it's a brutal time. People are doing battles and swords and stuff. I'm assuming some Highlander, just by chance and happenstance, was beheaded some other way.
Right. And to be honest with you, that's not one that I think has ever come up in any of the... I mean, I've never seen all of the television series. It might be in there somewhere, but that I don't know. I'm sure it probably could, right? Because it would...
Like, that's the way that would make sense to me, that, like, even Connor McLeod, the youngest Highlander, like, in a battle, killed some other Highlander and became the Highlander and never even knew about it.
Oh, so... Okay, so not born that way then.
Not necessarily. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But, like, he then went and fought in other wars. Like, he's in World War II.
Sure.
He could have had his head blown off or cut off by some other person, and if that had happened, does that person become the Highlander? Do those powers fizzle, or does that mean the gathering can never happen because they were killed by someone who wasn't a Highlander?
I don't know. That's a very good question. That's not one I've ever thought about either. It could probably... I don't know if it would fizzle out or if that person... Because then there would be... I guess the gathering would take longer if it went to just a normal mortal, right? Like, it would take longer.
Theoretically.
Because theoretically, yeah, I mean, here we are. Beating out a weird fantasy...
it's like one of those things that's not necessarily stated, but it's certainly in the rules. Like, it even could be... Like, I even love this moment of there being this person who's a Highlander that the Kurgan's going after in this battle... But Connor kills them first, but then Kurgan finds this person who was the Highlander and was like, well, I didn't do it.
Yeah, I didn't know. And then that becomes a Highlander? And then Connor becomes the Highlander, I mean? Yeah,
I mean, that's extra lore stuff that we don't necessarily need to play with. Like, we're already messing with the lore a little bit, but, like, it's just always been one of those things in my head of like, they're living in a world, other things can happen. It's like the old article that talked about how if you're immortal, like, if you live for long enough, eventually you will be trapped somewhere forever.
Yeah, that's...
Just mathematically, eventually something will happen and you'll be trapped somewhere forever.
That's a very interesting theory.
I mean, it happens to enough people who get trapped and die somewhere. Like, they get... Like, there's a landslide or a house collapses.
Yeah, sure.
But, like, you expand that to infinity, eventually that person will be you, immortal person, and you will be buried under tons of rock. But you can't die. So you're just stuck there, going crazy forever.
Till they find you or something. Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Huh. I had never considered that as an immortal.
Yeah, immortality is fun for a while, but eventually, hell.
Yeah, fate worse than death.
Yeah. It's the classic sci-fi fantasy thing of, you have been immeasurably good. I give you the gift of immortality. You have been immeasurably bad. I give you the curse of immortality. Mm-hmm. But it's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah, depends on your perspective. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into with one of the ideas behind making the immortal husband in this new pitch that we're doing, making him kind of, this is what we've gone for our entire lives, what we've looked forward to. I'm tired of this. I want to be mortal. I want to live a life that was promised to me where I can grow old and die because I have seen too much bloodshed and I'm tired. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would be an interesting way in a character trope for him because he living that long and seeing what you see, especially if you're influencing history for hundreds, thousands of years, maybe. Then
I'm fully on board. I fully support that. I think you're absolutely right to want to do that. I agree with that plot line 100%. So, I have an idea for what I think Connor McLeod's superpower would be. What do you think Sunda Castigair's superpower should be?
He's such a non-character. You can kind of, in the original anyway, you can kind of do with anything. And I do feel like it's almost like these superpowers shouldn't be, so obvious. They should be kind of something that we all, agility or, mild
The three that I have all pull from something that happened in the original movie. So, like, Kurgan's is super strength. Mm-hmm. Ramirez can do, like, the really localized, like, teleporting, popping in and out, moving super duper fast, but just for, like, a split second. Mm-hmm. And then Connor's, in my head, Connor has, like, electricity-based powers. Because, like even occasionally you would just see, like, the sparks coming up Connor McLeod's fingers in the movie. Like, even before he killed someone, like, when he's in the fight with Kurgan, like, there's a moment where, like, he has the electricity in his hands. It happens it happens once or twice. And then, like, obviously, like, the whole electrical discharge, for lack of a better word, when he kills the first dude.
Right. And there is that he's being struck on the mountain in, like, the 1700s by lightning. So, yeah, I mean, it could be. What do you mean by mild? Are we talking like electro, or are we talking like he gives you a static shock when he touches you?
Yeah, I'm not thinking like I can do electricity blasts like electro. I'm more thinking like I'm thinking something that can stun and not deal damage.
Okay. So yeah,
if we're gonna pull it into D&D things.
All right, that's fair. Yeah,
but I also think it's touch based. Like, you can't fire electricity.
Yeah, so almost like a super static shock, right? Like like you rubbed his feet on the carpet too much or something.
Exactly. And if we know anything about the Scottish Highlands, very plush carpeting.
Lots of it. Oh man, the shag is just unreal over there.
Yes. Oh God. So then, with that in mind, like, with those somewhat limitations, like, what do we want to give Sunda, and how can we make it, like, kind of relevant to the character?
Well, I do think like an agility, like a super speed, I guess, would be kind of, and I'm not talking the Flash. I'm just talking, faster than like Usain Bolt, right?
Right. I mean, theoretically, we kind of have that with Ramirez already.
Well, so I thought he was going to be mild teleportation.
Right, but mild teleportation and super speed are essentially the same thing.
Okay, that's fair. All right. Okay, so nix that then. Let's see. Again, there's not really much to him.
Yeah.
Overly compassionate? I don't know. I don't know. He just seems like a compassionate person.
I mean, we have two offensive abilities. Connor's is offensive because it's the electricity. Kurgan's is offensive because it's super strength.
Right.
Ramirez is somewhat more defensive because it's, like, super dodging.
Okay.
So what's another defensive ability? Like, what's... I
don't know, like are we taught maybe...
Or stealth. What's a good stealth ability? Like, another ability might be, like, blending into the shadows.
Yeah. Actually, I was leaning towards, like, a chameleon,
Or chameleon, absolutely.
Not even just full on like T-1000 chameleon. I mean, I like disappearing into the shadows where he can kind of just vanish from sight, if you will, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I mean, he can't turn himself, he's not the Invisible Man, can't turn himself invisible, but can definitely, make himself scarce in situations.
Yes. And that also gives us a fun final battle motif of Sunda starts using that ability, and you start hearing this noise, like, starts taunting Connor all around her, just like, this is what happened, this is what's going on, this is the history, this is the past. And Connor can't track down because chameleon.
Yeah, that's the perfect psychological warfare. And it could be, we could even do like a... She didn't know like the extent of his disappearing, reappearing abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he never even used the whole thing in front of him. So.
Yeah, and we could even use that same thing that I proposed for Kurgan with him of he killed someone super early and gained that ability, and then let all the other Highlanders kind of think that that was his main ability.
Yeah,
but he was keeping his true ability like close to the vest.
Exactly, and which is a perfect strategy, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, given the long game of this, that's what I would do.
Right, considering you have to kill people, might as well keep it close.
Yeah, may as well misdirect.
Exactly, have the ace up your sleeve.
There are there have to be other alliances. Like in my head, Ramirez is the mentor to Connor in the same way that Connor is a mentor to Sunda. Is the way that it worked out in my head. Because that kind of felt like the relationship that they had.
I see.
It's not textual at all, but that's just kind of like the metatextual thing that I read into it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because they don't necessarily need to kill each other. Just like it's like I just want to not be alone in my infinity.
Right. And I do kind of think that there was good Highlanders and bad Highlanders, and
absolutely
some of them they meet confidentially or whatever over the years, and have a little Immortals club. Why not?
Yeah, even Ramirez says like, look, it for me, I don't really care who wins and gets the
prize.
The prize, thank you. All I care about is that it's not Kurgan, because if it's Kurgan, 1,000 Years of Darkness.
Exactly.
But if it's not Kurgan, we'll probably be okay.
Yeah.
It's just this other thing that's going on.
Right. And I feel like most of them were probably good at heart. I don't know. I had a bad feeling about that Facile guy at the beginning. He feels like some sort of international terrorist.
Yeah, he felt a little too sleazy businessman for me.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely on the Donald Trump hustle.
Yeah, who they met at a wrestling match.
Yeah,
for some reason
in the basement or parking garage of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, the way they kept setting it up and the way Connor kept like glaring at like the headliner, I thought the lead wrestler was going to be the person he was going to be fighting. Like, they kept doing all these glamour shots of, hey, look at me, I'm this guy, I'm taking off my robe, gonna do my wrestling, and then we never see him again, and he's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the music video, I think, part of this movie that is so, like, MTV generation, because it was, like, really, like, sweeping, spinning crane shots of this huge wrestling match at the Garden, and it never comes back. It never.
No. It's a reason to meet up in the garage.
Yeah, because everybody's distracted, right?
Look, at the end of the day, the movie's fine.
Yeah, it just has some flaws, some minor.
But it's
flaws.
Like, and the casting's not great.
No, it's really not.
And even like looking it up and looking at the poster for the movie that's up on IMDb, it's a terrible poster.
Oh, I don't know. I kind of like it. I like the art on it. It's pretty, I don't know, 80s fantasy. It's kind of fun. It
is very 80s fantasy. I will give you that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. They don't make posters like that anymore. Now, at the time, very cheesy, but...
It's cheesy now.
Yeah, well, yeah,
there's a reason they don't make posters like this anymore.
You're very right.
But yeah, I think we have kind of the core concept and what we want to do with the movie. Want to recast it?
Sure, let's recast it.
Cool. So there are a couple different people who I feel like need to be one thing or another.
Okay.
But I think we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Sure.
But so Connor, for example, needs to be Scottish.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
Because the Highlander
can't be
from the Highlands.
right.
But we both cast women. So I'm curious who you have. My Connor has been in Game of Thrones. She's been in The Good Fight. She's in The Last Witch Hunter. It's an actress named Rose Leslie.
Okay, I'm familiar with her.
She is, for the listener, in Game of Thrones. She's the one who says she's Ygritte. You know nothing, Jon Snow. That one.
Ah, I see. I haven't watched Game of Thrones yet. Haven't gotten there. So
fair enough. And she's great. Like, she has the whole archery thing. Like, she is legitimately a badass. Because, like, my first thought had been, like, Karen Gillan, because that's kind of, like, the person you would assume. But I was like, I feel like I can get someone who's more... has seen war.
right.
And I felt like Rose Leslie might be a better candidate for that.
Okay, I can see that. I went in a completely different direction. And while I do believe that she needs to start out in Scotland for sure, because that's the title, I kind of looked more like I don't feel like Connor MacLeod is as much of a warlord as much as he is like a survivor, right? So I chose somebody who's a really good survivor, and I went with Elizabeth Moss as a lead.
Okay. Is Elizabeth Moss Scottish?
No. Doesn't mean you can't play Scottish, but...
Okay, yeah. I know who you're talking about. That is an interesting choice. I don't love it, if I'm being honest, just because I don't see her being kind of like the person who needs to do the fights and the action.
That's...
like, she's a phenomenal actress.
Well, and that, but that's kind of the point, though, is that these people are, you know... you can't tell that there's anything special about them at all or remarkable about them at all, and then they surprise you.
Right. In terms of appearance, I completely agree. But like, and I completely agree with that logic. But I meant like, as an actor performing it.
Oh,
I don't think that she is herself capable of doing.
I don't. Did you see the new Invisible Man?
Where she's the victim?
Yeah.
I did not. I have a hard time watching horror.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, she's a very, very, very physical role for her in that one.
All right.
So
fair.
Anyway, we don't have to go with her. I'm just defending my choice.
We can come back. We can come back to this and see how kind of fits how whoever we go with kind of fits in with the whole rest of the world that we create.
Sure.
But yeah. So because the next. Our number 2 lead in this movie is going to be Sunda Castigar. Why don't you tell me who you had for Sunda?
I went with Idris Elba for Sunda.
Okay. Interesting. Go on.
Well, I feel like he is both a clever combination of a dashing and can very easily be a swashbuckler, but could also very easily, I feel like there could be some darkness there that could turn on you if he wanted to.
I agree. I think Idris Elba is an excellent choice for the role. However, you also know that I care about optics when putting together couples, right?
Yeah.
How old is Idris Elba?
I am actually not aware how old Idris Elba is.
I'm going to look it up because I'm pretty sure he's in his 60s.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him. He took care of himself.
Oh, no, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. He's 47.
Oh.
I don't know why I thought he was in his 60s. He's 47. He's not nearly as old as I thought he was.
Oh, okay. Well, and at the same time, too, you know, these immortals, that's one thing they have in common. Of course. You know, is they're immortal, and who knows when it's activated, right? If we go with the thing where it's, you know, your first mortal wound is activating it, yeah. He could have been an older man.
Textually, that makes total sense to me. Like, textually, I'm fully on board with it, and it makes total sense to have people really of any age in these roles. That genuinely does not matter.
Right. For this one.
But however, if you're still ending up with, I'm an old guy ending up with a young girl, that's still a little problematic just from like a metatextual perspective. To me,
I can see that. How old is your lead? What's her name?
30. I just looked it up. Rose Leslie's 33, and Elizabeth Moss is 38.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's not a terrible
Elizabeth
difference.
Moss, Idris Elba isn't terrible. Like, that's not the end of the world. I don't know. It feels a little Mad Men to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it could be a little Mad Men, but it's not like there's an egregious,
No, it's
difference.
not egregious. I have had to shut down far worse on this podcast. And a 9-year difference is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
However, that's something I do want to be conscious of.
Okay.
My son de Castigier is Richard Brooks, who he's been in Bosch, he's been in Firefly. You may need to look him up because you may not necessarily recognize his face, but he is. Did you ever watch Firefly?
I did watch Firefly. I love Firefly.
In the last episode, he is the guy coming to stalk and hunt, and he's the what's the word I'm looking for?
He's the Boba Fett. He's the bounty hunter.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's bounty hunter. That's what I wanted.
Right.
Yes, he is the bounty hunter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember this guy.
And of course, I realize I'm making this big stink. He legitimately might be older than Idris Elba.
I believe he is, actually.
I'm hoisted by my own petard.
Let's
He's
see.
10 years older than Idris Elba. Oh no!
You have stepped into your own trap, my friend.
I have, but I didn't intend for them to be love interests.
I know.
In my original thinking, it was like you live a long enough time, you eventually stop caring about things like gender or
Age,
perceived
love.
anything.
Yeah.
So it's so I didn't necessarily care. Just I just had Connor being friends with Sunda Castier, so I didn't necessarily care about age.
Right.
But yeah, no, he's 57. If he's a love interest, we can definitely not go with Richard Brooks. Cool.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Look, you have the right pitch, and I agree with your pitch, and we're doing that.
Yeah.
It just we need to work on casting a little bit.
Yeah, no.
Tell me about who your Kurgan is.
This was the one Game of Thrones that I dipped into, and I'm sure you probably know who I'm going to go with. I chose.
You're gonna go with the Mountain.
Yep, I went Jason Momoa.
Oh, that's not the Mountain.
Oh, it's not the Mountain. I haven't seen Game of Thrones. Shame on me.
No. Jason Momoa is Daenerys Targaryen's love interest in the first season. He is Drago. Khal Drago.
Okay. Cool. Well, I was not aware of that. I went with Aquaman.
Yeah, you went with Aquaman. That's fun. That's probably a good choice. I went with so I was going based off the strength idea. And so I went with a professional wrestler. And I reached out to some friends who are fans of professional wrestlers and kind of the idea of that.
Okay.
And they gave me a couple options, and I ended up landing on a guy named Drew McIntyre.
Okay. Let me get the old Google search going here because I'm not that entrenched in wrestling. What was his name? I'm sorry.
Drew McIntyre.
Drew McIntyre. I have him up on my Google right now.
So he's a professional wrestler. He is also Scottish, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Especially since that could tie Kurgan a little bit more to Connor McLeod than textually the big bad is a little bit more tied to our hero than what we originally have.
Yeah.
And also, and far more important, his birthday is the same birthday as me, and that makes him a good person.
Okay. Well, let's go with him then. Yeah, I'm in. He looks like
tell me who you had.
I had Jason Momoa for mine.
Oh, that's right, Jason Momoa.
And so while I like Jason Momoa a lot, and what we really need for the Kurgan is somebody who's big and imposing, and while I think he can do it, I think Jason Momoa has it. This guy definitely has it. Drew McIntyre definitely has a real mean and imposing look that I'm seeing here, and these wrestling guys can act. So
yeah. And it's always fun, and especially just because he needs to be a big imposing guy. And I don't want him to go as crazy necessarily as the Kurgan in the original movie, because that might have been pushing it a little bit too far.
I love that guy though, Clancy Brown as the Kurgan.
Clancy Brown,
oh man,
is amazing.
He was he's totally chewing scenery with Kurgan.
Oh
it's
yeah,
so fun.
And he was clearly having so much fun. And I just think Clancy Brown is a wonderful human being, just in general.
Absolutely.
Even if I occasionally had to kick his son's butt at Magic the Gathering. Whatever.
Oh, well. Hate when that happens.
Darn. But no, it was fun. Good. So then let's talk about Ramirez.
Okay.
You went first for Kurgan. So my Ramirez, I was looking for an Egyptian.
Oh.
So I went for someone who's been on Mr. Robot, Bohemian Rhapsody. I went with Rami Malek.
Okay. That's an interesting choice. He's definitely...
Yeah, it was a little bit left field. I'm open to other ideas on this one, but I was trying to find someone who was, Egyptian to play the person with the Spanish name.
Yeah, who has a Scottish accent.
Yeah. This movie's chaos, so I was trying to find a little order in the chaos.
Yeah, that's totally chaos. So I went a different direction completely because I didn't want it to, with our female casting of Connor McLeod, I didn't want it to turn into like a male-female, male mentor type movie. So I casted female for Ramirez.
Okay.
Great. And my choice was Regina King.
Okay. Tell me why.
Well, you were talking earlier about having a war look about her, which she definitely does. She has this look that she's really been through it, and I could definitely see her in a mentoring role as well. Especially with her. Have you seen the HBO Watchmen?
No, it came up in the last episode too. I know I need to, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, that's really the reason why I went after her for this one, because
Great.
She is incredibly agile. She can pull the moves. I believe that she can train somebody to fight, and I believe she could handle herself. And in this instance,
I love it.
I believe that she's been, if she came out and was like, I've been fighting wars for 2,000 years, I would believe it.
I think that is excellent casting. Let's absolutely go with Regina King for Ramirez. I love that. Cool. Then next up, we have Heather, who I think we may end up needing to rename.
Yes, I did rename, actually.
Well, we'll definitely go with that. I went first to the last one, so you're up.
Okay. For this one, of course, like we talked about, she needs to have this kind of great love in her life, who is also a death, a loss, a tragic loss. I renamed. I figured at this point in history, there were a lot of people kind of roaming the different countries. So I went with a character named Hector, played by Oscar Isaac, as her mortal lover.
Oscar Isaac is always great.
Yeah. He's a lot of fun to... brings a lot of character in, which is what I really like about him.
Yeah. Because this is kind of like her first life and the living her first life, having her first love, right. I went with someone else who was Scottish.
Oh, okay.
Because she hasn't really like kind of leaned into the whole being immortal and traveling the world thing yet. So it's like, especially like how Heather in the first one is also Scottish.
Yeah, that's
like you're still in Scotland.
It's definitely a mirror of it. My whole thing was, once she was. My reasoning for casting Oscar Isaac was once she,
is exiled.
Yeah, exiled from her, whatever.
Yeah,
for being
it makes total sense to me. I got nothing against that. Like, I think that's a good idea. I'm just telling you my logic.
Right. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I went with Richard Madden, who also Game of Thrones, but was also in Rocket Man.
Oh, not the Harlan Williams movie in the 90s, but the Elton John movie.
Correct.
Okay.
He was the agent, the bad romance for Elton John.
Okay. Give me his name again. I'm sorry.
Richard Madden.
Right. Oh yes, this gentleman. Yeah. Oh yeah, I could see him totally.
Just a good Scottish boy.
Right. Yeah. Very Scottish.
So, and part of the reason why I thought it would be funny to have him be the love interest is because I know this movie's getting made again. I don't know who they're going to cast, but I'm sure he is going to be considered to play Connor McLeod.
Yeah, probably.
And I kind of have it funny to be like, yeah, okay, this is who the Highlander could be, but let's actually have this story and just like kind of do that flip. So in my head, it's just kind of a fun twist.
Okay. I can definitely see him, and I'm not sold on Oscar Isaac. I'd be totally fine going with your pick.
I may suggest we do Oscar Isaac for Sunda Castigier, but I don't think we can have the name Sunda Castigier if it's Oscar Isaac, because I actually think Oscar Isaac's a good choice for that.
Yeah, I could see that too. He would have to probably have more of a Spanish name.
Yeah. Or, yeah, because I think he's Guatemalan.
Right, okay.
As opposed to Castigier, who is Ethiopian.
Exactly.
I looked it up. But let's go with Richard Madden for this one.
Sure.
For timeline reasons. So the next person I have is Rachel Ellenstein, who, for me, I did not make Jewish because we're now 35 years into the future, and theoretically someone who would be around that same age wouldn't necessarily be a Holocaust survivor.
Right.
I was trying to think of like other things that have kind of happened 35 years after World War II and the Holocaust.
Okay.
So I went with a woman named Amy Chang.
Oh, okay.
Who was in Crazy Rich Asians. She's really more well known for being in Growing Up. And she's just a good actress, can be kind of funny, who could also be escaping some sort of horrible war-like terrible treatment from from 30 to 40 years prior.
Absolutely. I'm totally on board with that. I actually did not cast her. She's one that I left out because she was the original Highlander. There's like 3 or 4 leads, and everybody else is really tertiary. So
yeah, it was one of those weird movies where like they introduced some people, and then just like 2/3 through the movie, here's my secretary who I've raised like a child. Cool. Anyway, bye forever. You're leaving me? Yup.
Later. Yeah, and I see it, like that's why I think that Nazi scene in the movie was cut, because I thought that she was a former lover that he felt bad about. I didn't know until last night that she was a kid that he rescued.
Yeah. I don't know. But like it's definitely like kind of like a pseudo daughter type role, and it's definitely like when he leaves, it's so fucked up because it's like, "Oh, I am your parent figure. Even if you win, you're not coming back?" No.
Yep.
Here's all the stuff that's yours now.
Yeah.
This is just me getting in an elevator saying goodbye forever. And she's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
You're basically my dad.
It's definitely a hard-hitting scene.
But not for the reason they wanted.
Exactly. It's a kind of magic spoils it, I think. But
yeah. Did we talk about Brenda Wyatt, or did I skip her accidentally?
We skipped her.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's talk about Brenda Wyatt.
So I actually did not, now that I'm looking at my list, I did not cast a Brenda Wyatt, but I think her character is important, but not as a love interest.
I agree with that as well. It's she's the face of the audience. Is that or whatever the term is, the Scott McCloud understanding comics? The stand-in for the audience of I have this explained to me so that the audience understands.
Right. She's the everyman.
Yeah.
So
I agree that I don't think she should be a love interest because it's weird and creepy. So I went with Naomi Scott.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's great.
Power Rangers, Charlie's Angels, Aladdin. I just think she's great, and she's going to be the new Bond girl.
Oh, is she really? Oh, nice. Good for her.
I think so.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's go with Naomi Scott. I love her. She's great.
Cool. So that brings us back to... Oh, and then I literally wrote down some sort of police guy. Yeah. I didn't really cast any of the police people. Like, I threw someone in just because, like, why not? But I don't think we need it.
So here's another thing that I did want to kind of touch on is there's this great missed opportunity in this movie, in the original Highlander. It's kind of on like a sideline C story where they're looking for a serial killer. They think it's a serial killer who's cutting off heads and stuff like that. But they didn't really hit it home. And I thought that in this one, they could kind of hit it a little bit harder. A little more they're a little more cat and mouse, a little more on their tail, more, kind of like, is this a cult of people? They don't know, obviously, that they're immortals, but I did think that we should have some sort of, police intervention, because that was another interesting facet of the original Highlander that kind of got, I don't know, marginalized. Yeah, because
they do just behead these people and then just, like, leave the body.
Yeah, and it just, lots of electricity happens and they walk away. So
yeah, who's gonna pay for all this damage to these cars?
Hey, that's what you have insurance for, buddy. Just in case of the quickening.
Yeah, right. But yeah, okay. So then, who did you have for your some sort of police guy and/or guys?
Well, I have a real problem with authority, and I always kind of look at police as like crusty old white men. So I cast.
That's what I did.
Huh? What's that?
That's what I did.
Yeah. So I went for some kind of tried and trues. For Lieutenant Moran, who was like the cop guy, the lead detective. I put John C. McGinley in.
Great. I love John C. McGinley.
And he's got to have a captain. So I threw in an old B-movie favorite who's played a cop in a million B-movies and wanted to throw Tom Atkins into the mix.
Great. Love it. My kind of bumbling cop was a character comedy guy named Brian Husky, but I think your choices are better.
Okay.
Especially because they're for specific characters as opposed to, and I quote, some sort of police guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can have a guy who's some sort of police guy.
I feel like we as a society have moved past the need of really any some sort of police guy.
Yes, we should defund the some sort of police guy division.
I agree. I hear they're all bastards.
They are. Some sort of police guys are all bastards. That's a very large acronym to put on a T-shirt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had more letters on a T-shirt than that.
That's true. I have as well. I redact that statement.
Not the one I'm wearing now, but in general.
Same.
So that brings us to Connor and Sunda.
Okay.
And I don't know what we should do about that. Because even though I do think Idris Elba is excellent casting, I feel like the optics of that are bad.
And why do you think the optics are?
Because I'm not a big fan of having an older guy paired with a young, even if they are closer in age, of having an older man paired with a younger woman. Because that's kind of like the thing that I've been fighting against a little bit more on this show. That said, 9 years isn't the end of the world.
Oh no, it's really not. My wife is 5 years older than me. It's
yeah, and my parents are 6 years apart. Also, like, it's not the end of the world. It just like one of the things that I care about and like try to push a little bit is like just they're within the time gap, so it works for me.
So what?
I will trust your judgment on say your Connor's name again.
My Connor was Elizabeth Moss.
I'll trust your judgment on it, but I'm not in love with that pairing.
Okay, and I can see why. What?
And also just because I'd love Connor to be a little bit more action star-y. I mean, you'd think over 400 plus years, and even with training from Regina King, you would think Regina King would have trained Connor to be a good fighter. So I would expect that from whoever plays the part.
And so what? In all honesty, another reason why I landed on Elizabeth Moss, not just that because she's a survivor, but my thing about Connor McLeod was he was kind of the everyman. Like I wouldn't expect what's his name, Christopher Lambert, to come and whip out a sword and start swashbuckling either. And I think that was kind of the charm of it, which is why I chose her. I thought that she could probably, learn some impressive moves and go with it. But I'm not married to it. What was your Connor's name again? I'm so sorry.
Rose Leslie. I have a counter argument against Elizabeth Moss,
okay.
But it feels like a punching down low blow kind of thing.
Mm.
She's a Scientologist.
Oh, I did not know that. Well, that changes my opinion on everything. All right.
Like I said, it's look, I'm obviously not a fan of Scientology. I think they're a horrible organization, and they're really, really bad.
Yeah, really bad, really creepy.
And I don't think someone who is a Scientologist, that necessarily means that they themselves are bad.
No, it's an indoctrination thing.
Yeah. And also, like, that she's also in Handmaid's Tale and Invisible Man and gets to do all these amazing things and is a fantastic performer. So I don't think that necessarily speaks ill of her or her performance. I just don't like it. Like I said, it feels like punching down. And I don't think that should be, like, the reason not to cast her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
But...
she's definitely, like, one of the reasons, like I said, she's definitely kind of normal looking for a movie star, right? Right, and I don't have anything wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Like I would actively cast her in other roles.
Sure.
But not the lead of an action movie.
Okay, so if we want to go Rose
let's do this. If we go with Rose Leslie, mm-hmm. I will agree to whoever you think for Sunda Castigar.
Okay. I'm totally on board. I had to do some digging. I did not realize. I thought she was somebody else. Rose Leslie. I thought she was a different actress. I'm totally on board with her. She's definitely She's definitely got the warrior look down, and now that I'm scrolling through some of her IMDb page, yeah, she's awesome. She's an excellent choice. I mistook her for somebody else in Game of Thrones. I'm not sure who, though.
I'm assuming you thought she was going to be Sansa Stark or something?
Possibly. Again, yeah. I was never really a big Game of Thrones fan.
That's fine. You do not have to be.
In all honesty, Highlander is as swashbuckling as I get.
That's fair. That's fine. You're a more sci-fi and horror guy, correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Less fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. It's harder for me to grab onto for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, let's do LaRose Leslie for Connor.
Yes. Cool. So then I am happy to give you a couple minutes to come up with someone who you think would be a good Sunday Castigair, unless you still think it should be Idris Elba, in which case, like I said, I will go with whoever you think should be Sunday Castigair.
I understand the optics, but I think it's okay. I mean...
Like I said, in our world, it makes sense because they're both immortal, but... I mean,
it's not like Stallone or anything. Still I understand.
No, but it's still a 47-year-old dating a 33-year-old.
Yeah, it is still a little off.
And if it's one of those things where, like, even the 9-year difference would have been one of those things where it's like, if there's the possibility that it's like dating someone that one of your kids would be friends with, that's bad.
So what is it? It's a 10-year difference between them. No, it's more than 10. He was 72 and she was 87. Yeah. Okay. But still, I feel like, in this world...
It is, again, for this world, it makes total sense to me. The problem is that if you're showing them side by side on the poster as a love interest, you are the optics of that is that it's cool to date someone 14 years younger than you.
Yeah, I can see that.
We understand that within the context of the world, that's not what's happening.
Right.
But for the same reason that things like the Joker are bad ideas, is that people who get the movie and think it's good, but people who don't get the movie, all of a sudden you've set this really terrible example.
Exactly.
It's the Rick and Morty scenario.
Yeah, I'm still actually uncomfortable watching Rick and Morty, to be honest with you. I know everybody loves it, but it makes me feel weird.
That's how I feel about South Park.
I could see that. There's a lot of stuff that makes you feel weird about South Park. All right, yeah, I have a middle ground for you.
I was gonna say, you can grow up Jewish, surrounded by people who are fans of South Park. Guess what they're going to call you all the time exclusively?
Oh, wow. I am sorry.
Yeah. So, not a fan of South Park. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, I can totally see that. I am sorry. Wow. Sorry.
You get it.
I do get it. And I'm sorry.
Who do you have for your middle ground for Sunda Castigair?
All right. So, for Sunda Castigair, I think we should do Michael B. Jordan as a caster.
Sure. It's been a long time since I've had Michael B. Jordan in something, and he would obviously be excellent.
Yeah, and he's got the athletic look. Born the same year, February 1987, in one of my many hometowns in Orange County, Santa Ana. He's definitely got the athleticism. I totally believe that he'd be, swashbuckling 2,000 years ago and swashbuckling today.
Yeah, I buy that too. I think that's an excellent choice.
All right.
Cool. I'm 100% down. That's our cast. Oh, writer-director. Writer. So the writer I really just picked because Daredevil. He was writer, director, showrunner for Daredevil. I went with Drew Goddard.
Okay.
Because I wanted those really interesting fight scenes.
I see why you went with him, yeah. For me, yeah. I kind of went the other way. Definitely a TV guy as well. I went with Damon Lindelof because he's actually proven himself to be pretty good at writing alternate histories.
That's true. Damon Lindelof is actually a really good choice for this.
So
let's do Damon Lindelof.
Okay.
I like that. I think that's a good choice. Then who did you have for director?
For director of our Highlander remake, I went with Lee Whannell.
Tell me about Lee Whannell.
Or is it Whannell? I think it's Lee Whannell. Apologies. He started...
Just don't know who this person is.
He got his start with James Wan doing Saw. I believe he was the writer of Saw. And he has come into his own as a director as well. He's made a lot of kind of mid-budget genre pictures over the past few years. His most recent being the new Invisible Man remake. A few years ago, he made Upgrade. And he's got a really interesting visual style that I think really what Highlander at its core was, just like we talked about, a big music video. So it needs to be a bit stylistic, and he's definitely got a signature style to him that I think would fit the Highlander world really well.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. That's a good choice. So the two people I went back and forth with were Chad Stahelski, which is the director for the John Wick trilogy. But he is the director for Highlander. Like, that's who they're going with for this remake that has been announced.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, so no. And the other person who I think makes for a good choice is Gareth Evans, who was the director for The Raid. Yeah,
was he also Rogue One? Or was that a different Gareth?
I'm not sure. So part of the reason why I went with Gareth Evans was because... So I reached out specifically to, my friend Zach, who's really good with, like, swords. And I'm like, who would you trust to choreograph and be a good director for sword fights? And he said, well, it's one of these two guys. And then he sent me a short that Gareth Evans directed. And it's on YouTube, just called Pre-Vis Action. And it's this lone woman swords person, being a courier for some sort of message, fighting off two other swordsmen. And it's great and it's epic. And I was like, well, this is basically the movie we want to make.
Okay.
And that's why I thought Gareth Evans would be fun. I do not think he's Rogue One.
Okay, I think that's a different... I loved The Raid, and I loved the sequel. I thought
he's Raid, he's The Raid 2, he's Apostle, he's VHS 2. I don't know what that means.
Oh, VHS is great. It's a like an anthology film type, like Creepshow type horror movie, where it's like 3 or 4 different... the whole way in is like there's this VHS tape that they have to get a VCR to play, and it's each one shows a story, like a 15-minute horror short, and then it's a lot of fun. There's like 3 or 4 of them, I think.
He didn't do that one. He did he was on the sequel.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, there's like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, it's a horror movie. Of course there are.
Yeah. Money in the Bank.
So he's the rumored director for Deathstroke. They're going to do another Raid that he's going to be executive producer on. I don't know what Blister is. So, like, because it's like the kind of that close action, personal, constant fighting kind of thing, I thought he'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, he'd be really great. He'd definitely be great. I've seen most of his movies, and I really like them.
That's fun. That's good. Good person to add to your favorite directors list, then.
Yeah.
And especially if he works with Damon Lindelof. Lindelof is going to create this really intricate story, and then Gareth Evans will come and put here's what this scene needs to convey, and here's the story that's going on. Great, here's the fight that's going to happen in the middle of that.
Right, and that's really, if we're really going to go all out with sword battles, which I think this definitely should be. He's the guy.
And with, as you said, even if we are adding in the element of superpowers that I think we should add in, I think that these are more grounded fights as opposed to kind of like the Marvel and even the John Wick style of fighting.
Yeah, the John Wick, I loved the first John Wick movie, and then slowly it just turned into, the sequels slowly devolved into video games, and it got boring.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
I still like them, but like I watched them like over the course of a week or something.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, they're fun. They are fun movies.
Yeah.
They're, it's really fun to see.
But the first one's obviously the best one.
Yeah. That is a good old-fashioned revenge pick, kind of came out of nowhere. The world they established was a lot of fun, but yeah, I don't know, just the more sequels.
The part of what makes the first one so great is it's like they hint at this amazing greater world, and then in the sequels they start defining this world. I'm like, but now it doesn't make sense because you defined it.
Exactly. It's not as fun. It's, it's really not as fun.
You want to be able to have the conversation, be like, but what does it mean? What does this do? Oh, I want to know. And then you told me, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Cool. Now the conversation's over.
Right.
I will watch those movies forever, but.
Yeah, sure. They're good, cheesy fun. Yeah, they don't really make a whole lot of movies like that anymore. So
Yeah. But, okay, now we have our cast list. So let me take you through it. Highlander, An Immortal's Journey. Connor McLeod is going to be played by Rose Leslie. Her love interest, Sunda Castigair, is going to be Michael B. Jordan. Brenda Wyatt is going to be Naomi Scott. Kurgan will be Drew McIntyre. Ramirez, who, Egyptian by way of Spain, is going to be Regina King. Heather, who we renamed...
Hector.
Hector is Richard Madden. Rachel Ellen Steen, who we didn't rename, but whatever. Amy Chang. Then our Lieutenant Moran is going to be John C. McGinley, and the captain will be Tom Atkins. All of this will be written by Damon Lindelof and directed by Gareth Evans. That is the remake of Highlander, An Immortal's Journey.
Oh, those pesky immortals! What a journey it is.
Yeah. So, you gonna sign up for whenever this starts streaming, so we don't have to go see it in a gross, filthy theater?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely am going to get the. Let's see, what studio hasn't launched an app yet?
Just Viacom.
Let's go with MGM. I'll buy it on the MGM app.
Oh God, The Lion.
The Lion. I think MGM does own Highlander.
Oh well, that's appropriate then.
Yeah. All
right, fun. Thank you so much for helping me remake Highlander.
It was a blast.
Apologies for all the breaks.
Oh, no worries. It was a blast. Thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
Always good. I'm assuming I'm going to need to have you back on in a couple months anyway, because it's almost October.
Oh, yes. We can talk about it.
And if I remember correctly, you wanted to talk about a horror movie of some kind in October, and I'm down.
Okay. I'll have to dial it back. I don't remember which one it was.
I may have written it down. Nope. Sure didn't. Anyway, for people who haven't listened to your remake of American Presidents, I never remember the name of the movie. Oh, no.
My Fellow Americans. Took me a sec.
My Fellow Americans, Monster Squad, or Blade Runner.
I think we did Beetlejuice.
There was another one.
We did Beetlejuice.
And Beetlejuice. Yeah, Beetlejuice. This is your 5th time on the show. If anyone hasn't listened to any of those episodes, and they should go back and listen to them because every single one of them is great, tell people a little bit more about yourself and where they can find you online.
Well, I am currently working as a composer, just doing horror movies and short and stuff like that. Other than that, I was also writing. Had a number of projects stalled because of COVID, so just trying to chase the work that I do get. You can find me on Instagram at Kev Mosteller, and also on Twitter at the same handle if you're interested. Yeah. Don't really have anything else to promote. Oh, I do. I just did the score for this little thriller that's coming out called Stark Raving Actress. That's going to be a fun little movie. I can't wait for you guys to see that one.
Yeah, cool. Love it. Good name.
Yeah, it's really fun. One of the best dark comedies I've ever seen.
Good. All right. Yeah, I'm down. Fun. If you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Sam Gasch, SamGasch, or follow the podcast on Instagram at Ideal Remake, or join us on Facebook, Ideal Remake or Ideal Remake Podcast. Or if you don't mind, if it wouldn't be too much to ask, if you could take some time for me, your good friend Sam, and go and leave us a 5-star review. It would be really good, and it genuinely helps people find the podcast through whatever algorithm recommendation things that the podcatchers deem fit. Yes. So normally I ask people to say I ask them what their favorite quote is from the movie, but I feel like there's only one thing you can say from this movie, and we both need to shout it at the top of our lungs.
Okay, ready?
Are you ready?
Ready.
3, 2, 1.
There can be only one.
That was better than what I was going to do. I love it. There can only be one. Shave my head.
Yeah, with your sword.
Yeah. Also, if you're assembling your sword and you put it together in the middle and it clicks into place, you have structurally weakened your sword and it is a bad sword.
I know. I like every time I watch him clicking that thing together, I'm like, so it's just like a series of mechanisms that holds that thing. Like,
And what's crazy is it's the same design of the sword he had a bajillion years ago. Because, like, you see him wielding the same sword in all of his fights. All of them. Mm-hmm. And so, like, he either got it specially made or he's had the same sword with him for thousands of years. And then he had the sword cut in half, which means that the sword is ruined.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey, half sword will travel, man. It was the 80s. You can put it back together.
Yeah. All right, man. I love it. All right, cool. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah. This was fun as always.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.